Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Way the World Works, a Tuttle Twins podcast. Today, a very exciting day. We have a guest, our first guest, as we've done the new video format. So please welcome Sean Malone. He's an old friend of mine. I used to work with him at FEE. We've had him on, I think, before we did video, many years ago on the pod.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. And now he is the Chief Creative Officer at Lexandria, which is a really exciting project, that I'll let him talk about in a minute. And we're going to talk about a lot of really fun things. Sean is one of the few people in this world who's managed to take his art, something he loves to do, filmmaking, storytelling, and use it to tell a message and to tell a message very effectively. He's great at doing that. There are so many things we could link in the show notes of projects he's worked on. So Sean, welcome. Thank you for talking with us today.
Thanks, Brittany. It's good to see you.
You too.
It's been a few years since I've actually seen you, I think, since you moved back to DC from Atlanta.
Which was 7 years ago this week, I think. So it's been a while.
I know. I can't believe how long I've lived in Atlanta at this point. It's coming up on like 10 years, actually.
Because Sean also used to live in DC.
Yes. I lived in DC for 7 years. So
okay. I thought it was a little longer than that. But that's still a long time to make it.
2010, or I guess the very beginning of 2011 to 20. Oh, actually, it wasn't even that long. It was like 5 years. Because it was
okay.
to middle of 2016.
Oh, you moved. I didn't realize you moved right before I did. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how you got started in filmmaking. I would actually call it more storytelling. Do you think that's fair to say? Yeah.
I think that's more accurate anyway.
Yeah, me too.
So my background is actually as a composer and as a musician. Right. And so I spent my formative years like learning how to write music. And when I was in college and perform as a percussionist and a drummer, and a jazz player, a jazz vibraphonist and stuff like that. And I love doing that. But as I got more and more interested in that kind of work, I got more interested in figuring out how to write my own stuff. And that trend or that trajectory has kind of been my entire life. Because I went from that, from just performing music to writing music. And then I did that for a little while and I wanted to figure out how to tell stories while writing music. Because there's a few schools of composition, tone poems, like Richard Strauss's tone poems.
Tone poems? Is that what you call them?
They're called tone poems.
I like that.
And he would take stories and try to it's like Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf, right?
Where yes, yeah. Do kids still?
You're actually
I hope kids still
telling
listen to
a story with this stuff.
That's how I learned to tell the sounds of all the different instruments. I loved whenever we did that in school.
Especially when they give you the notes at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, Yobo represents this. So I love all that stuff. And then I love movies, and I've always loved movies, and I've always been a big movie watcher. And so when I was maybe a sophomore in college, I was like, I should go to grad school for film scoring. And I should get into film scoring. And so I went to NYU and I learned film scoring. And then oddly enough, by the way, I studied with Ira Newborn, whose music you can hear on the big screen right now because he wrote the Naked Gun theme. He did all the Naked Gun scores. So the new Naked Gun movie that just came out is with Ira's music. But anyway, then I moved to LA and I did that. But I was working on other people's films and I didn't love it. Like I was working on other people's, whatever they wanted to do.
It was like their passion projects, but not yours.
Projects. And overwhelmingly, they were containing messages that I didn't agree with or didn't really like. And honestly, not all of it was, or not even very much of it was necessarily political or ideological. It was really just like dark and nihilistic and kind of awful, like there's a lot of horror movies. There's a lot of like dramas where horrible things happen to people and stuff like that. And I just got really tired of it. So I started writing my own stuff and I started trying to edit my own stuff and make my own things. And at the same time, I was hanging out with a lot of friends in LA who really did not understand the kinds of principles that Tuttle Twins talks about.
Most people in LA, probably most people in California probably don't.
And so I started looking around for like, how do I explain this stuff to people who are one, like very much new to all this stuff. And two, like they're not really going to read a book about it, right? So the very first thing I did was I found an article, I think it was at FEE, pretty sure it was at FEE, called Profit, Not Just a Motive, which was written by Steve Horwitz, who passed a few years ago. But so I reached out to Steve and I said, hey, I'd like to make this article into a video. And he was graciously, allowed me to do it and said it was cool, and was kind of flattered by it.
This was freelance. You weren't working for any organization.
I wasn't getting paid. I just did it. I didn't get paid for this at all. I just made it. And so I turned that into a video script, and then I made like a kind of motion graphics driven video about that and about profit and what it is and why it matters, like profits and losses as signals, as price signals. And so, that actually did pretty well. It got me, it didn't do huge views or anything, but people really liked it. And particularly people like Steve really liked it. And so that got me connected with like Larry Reed, who, was the president of FEE at the time.
We love Larry.
That eventually kind of got me into this kind of world. And really only about, I think that was 2009. And by 2000, like the end of 2010, I was pretty close to being able to do this full time, mostly just as a freelancer back then. And then I have subsequently worked for a litany of nonprofits and, done all of the things.
Yeah.
But it's been about 15 years. It's been a solid 15 or 16 years that I've been doing this kind of stuff. And I think storytelling is the right way to look at it, because I don't really look at myself as a creator in any one particular medium. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I like to write, I like to make films, I like to make music, I like to do all kinds of things. And all of that storytelling thread can follow through the whole thing, Yeah. And I think a lot of what I learned in music has served me well, because the interesting thing about doing film music especially is that you're called on to still tell the story, but you have to do it in an abstract way. You don't get words, don't get imagery, right? So you have to be a lot more creative to sort of figure out, this is more about rhythm and pacing and mood and tone. And so I think that goes into, some of the other stuff I've done since.
Now, were your parents, I'm curious. Oh, go on.
No. Yeah. Ask your question. I can talk about that for him later.
Yeah. I'm curious if your parents, I think that you, maybe not even you and I, that the generation, the Title Twins readers and listeners right now are lucky to live in a time when they can really use the artistic skills they like to do and turn that into a job. Yeah. I know that when we were kids and even before then, you tell your parents you want to go to film school, or you tell your parents, I'm going to be a musician. And it's like, why don't you be a doctor or a lawyer? Like, why don't you try something that's going to make more money? Were your parents supportive?
Yeah, they were in general. I think what's funny is that they were very supportive of me going to college, and they were very supportive of me going to school for music, because they knew that I loved it and that I was good at it and those kinds of things. But I will tell you, like, there were points, especially after grad school, where this was, I exited grad school in 2007, height of the housing collapse and all this stuff, and wasn't a very good job market, right? And so I spent a good 6 months or so looking for a job in LA. And, my dad starts pitching me things at some point. He's like, well, I don't know, maybe this isn't free. And he starts pitching me like jobs with the Park Service and stuff like that.
Anything to get you a real job.
Pretty much. Yeah. And he, to his credit, he was looking for things that had an artistic bent to it. So it'd be like, here's a Park Service job, but you'd be making videos in the communications department or whatever, I'd be like, okay, well, not really what I want to do, but I'm working on it. But I ended up doing pretty well regardless. It was a tough job market though, it took a while. And I think people are experiencing that today, like literally right now too. And so people are getting out of high school or college. I think, you really have to want it. And that's true of an artistic career regardless. Like, there was, it's actually kind of made me mad, but one of my mentors growing up was he's still alive, was a vibraphonist named Steve Rabine, who plays in Omaha.
A vibraphonist. What do I know what a vibraphone is?
Yeah. Well, it's like a marimba, or what a lot of people would assume is a xylophone. Everybody assumes that a xylophone is every keyboard percussion instrument. It is not, I can assure you. But a vibraphone is a metal version of that has kind of indefinite sustain and a sustain pedal like a piano would have.
Yeah.
And then the thing that makes it a vibraphone is that it has a motor, in it that turns paddles that are under each one of the bars, and it creates a oscillating effect to it. So it has a vibrato kind of quality to it.
We're getting a lot of lessons here. I would not have known. Most kids play piano, drums, but Sean's over here with the obscure instruments.
I mean, I would say it's obscure. It's one of the newer instruments, though. It's only it's only about 100 years old. And it was made famous by people like Milt Jackson, who played with Benny Goodman, Lionel Hampton played with Benny Goodman, but Milt Jackson was a bebop vibraphone player. That's one of my personal heroes and stuff like that. But anyway, Steve Rabine, his kid went to the Eastman School of Music at the time that I was in college, and his kid had graduated. He went to the graduation ceremony, and somebody from Eastman said, "Look to your right, look to your left. The two people next to you won't be working in music in 2 years." And I was like, what a thing to say to people who just spent tens of thousands of dollars going to music school. You're like, 2/3 of this audience won't even be having a career in this anymore. But to be fair, that's kind of been my experience. The vast majority of people that I went to school with no longer do anything creative in their career or art, as an arts career. So I think I've been pretty lucky in that regard.
Yeah. And I want to actually kind of get to that. So not only have you been lucky in working with your artistic passions, but you're using it to tell a message. And now you've started a whole new project where you're even doing more of that. So I wanted you to talk about the new project and what you're doing and how that all ties together.
Yeah. So the last few years, so I left FEE I was at the creative director for the Foundation for Economic Education, where Brittany and I worked together for about 7 years. And I left in 2022. And in 2022, I joined a company called Return on Ideas. And Return on Ideas is a for-profit media production and marketing company. And I've been doing that for a little while, and we're still doing a little bit of work. But recently, just a few months ago, I joined Lexandria, which is a spinoff kind of another organization that has been around for a little while called Storyteller. I don't expect anybody to really know what these are, but Storyteller created a digital learning platform, like an e-learning platform, to host curriculum and textbooks and things like that for teachers.
Kind of like Khan Academy or different?
Okay. Yeah, I think Khan Academy is a good analog to it, I think, but there are a few differences. One, obviously, we're a little bit more focused on things like social studies and things like philosophy, political philosophy, stuff like that. And we want to talk, not in an overly ideological way, but from a classical liberal kind of perspective, right? From a little bit more of a freedom, individualism, personal responsibility kind of perspective than you'll see in a lot of curriculum that gets published, around the internet and wherever else. Another difference, though, is that it's a platform that's designed for teachers and now for homeschool parents also to be able to deal with. You can assign coursework, and you, the teacher or the parent, can monitor the student's progress through that course material. So you can see how far they've made it. You can see their scores.
Nice.
We have quizzes embedded in the platform where the quizzes will be auto-graded. So you don't even have to do the grading manually yourself. You can then just see how they've performed on that. And so recently we've spun off into Lexandria, and our vision is, for lack of a good way to say this, it's a lot bigger than I think Storyteller ever really had. And so I am just on the cusp of, we're kind of rebuilding the platform a little bit and redoing some of the technology behind the platform right now because it's a little bit outdated. And then soon, within the next couple of months, we're going to do a big relaunch with the new platform. You can get to it now through a site called poptential.org, like pop culture, but potential, right? So poptential. But because that's kind of the only series of content that's on there now. Very, very soon, I've recently written a whole basically primer on the founding principles of the United States.
Nice. Going
back from the Enlightenment period and John Locke and people like that, all the way through, the founding of the country with, James Madison and George Henry and all these guys. And So that's going to be a flagship piece. We're working with some other partners.
That's going to be like a written piece, not a video.
Yeah, it's already there. Yeah. It's already actually up on the platform. It's just not available until we relaunch. So once we actually relaunch, everybody's going to be able to see this. But yeah, that's already there. I'm ingesting a whole bunch of video content that I've made in the past, like things from Out of Frame or Common Sense Soapbox, some stuff that I did at FEE. We're also working with some partners. I don't know exactly what I'm all at liberty to say on the partners, but there are some good ones.
It's a sneak peek. We're getting a preview.
And for what it's worth, we've talked to Connor a little bit about some of this stuff too. And I'm kind of hoping to talk with him more about bringing some Tuttle Twins Academy stuff over as well. If we can, but we want to be.
There's a plug. Sign up for the Tuttle Twins Academy. Got to throw it in there.
Good. Well, we want to be a home for really high quality educational material. And my vision for the content side is not limited to textbooks. It's going to include video and audio and, standalone quizzes and, surveys and all kinds of things that we can do with this platform that nobody's really done. And we can then see on our end, we can see like how effective that stuff is, which a lot of people just, in our network, especially in the nonprofit world, I think a lot of people have a tendency to put things out, but not really figure out if it's doing anything, like it'll go out there and maybe people will have watched it, but whether or not it actually moved the needle or changed anybody's thoughts and minds about anything, you don't always know. So that's a big piece.
I think it's hard to ever know, really.
It can be. So
especially in nonprofit world, because a lot of nonprofits obviously are funded through donations, so you don't have the same market signals as you do in other, where you can say my book is good, people are buying it. You don't always know.
It's so underappreciated how that gap is awkward in the nonprofit world, because your customer, like if we're talking to parents, like right now we want to be talking to parents, but it's some donor that pays for it. And so what the donor wants may not necessarily be what the user wants, right? And we have to always keep that in mind. And that's something that I feel like I was pretty good at keeping front and center with FEE, where I think a lot of times people aren't very good at that. And instead they just kind of let the donors drive everything. Yeah. But we really want to make sure that all of the content that we put up here is, it's usable. It's stuff that your kids are going to want to enjoy. Like they're going to enjoy going through this content. They're going to enjoy learning, and it's going to be fun. And also it's going to be stuff that you as a parent or a teacher can trust is actually, smart and good and well-sourced and, not bad information that you're going to be sharing with your students. Right.
And this is perfect timing for you because you just became a dad.
I did.
Congratulations.
I'm such an old dad at this point because I'm 42 and I've just had a newborn. He is a whopping over 12 pound, 6-week-old.
How much did he weigh when he was born?
10.
Okay, I was just I was 9 something. I was a big baby.
It was a pretty harrowing experience that ended in a C-section, which we didn't really want, but like he was not budging. He would not move. He absolutely would not move. And he was overdue by 2 weeks.
Oh dear.
And
poor
we
wife.
finally got him out there. And when the doctor pulled him out, he was like, "We have a sumo wrestler." They were guessing 13 pounds. And I was like, oh gosh.
My goodness. Poor Marion.
He was close to 11. So
well, that's got to be, again, even more pressing because now it's like you get to leave behind this legacy that's going to teach not only other people's kids, help other people's kids, but your kid too is going to be watching and learning.
And honestly, like, so Lexandria, the core team is just me and Richard Lawrence, who I worked with FEE, and Josh Sanders, who I worked with FEE.
Oh yeah, both great guys.
And all three of us are pretty recent dads.
That's right, yeah.
So Richard's kids are just about a year old. Yep. Josh has 2 that are, I think, about a year and a half, and then one new, very new baby that's, I think, 6 months old or so. And we're all feeling that. Like, we're all feeling how important it is that when our kids get to the age where they can start really digging into the mysteries of life, that we have something to say. that is not just the standard sort of, all the kind of stuff that you're seeing kids get taught in schools that is making them a lot of times more insecure or feel like their culture is horrible, or, they need to look at the world through an identitarian lens where they're the product of their race or their gender or whatever. We want to get away from that as much as we can and bring it back to kind of teaching classics and teaching good philosophy and logic and critical thinking, and then also like sound principles of economics and, history and all these kinds of things, good stuff. We like all of that. But,
go on.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I really see a world where we eventually expand into literature and we expand into things that a lot of our movement just doesn't even talk about at all. So.
No, that's so great. I think it's such an exciting project. I keep saying product and project. It is the evening of a Friday afternoon, so my brain is fried right now.
I hear you.
But I want, for our final couple minutes, I wanted to know if you could give some advice. So if you were to tell somebody who was maybe 10 to 12 years old and they came to you and they said, Sean, I want to be a filmmaker, but I want to make sure that I'm making sure that I'm talking about the right messages, the good messages. How would you what advice would you give them?
So there's a couple things. One, I think I'm going to go off script a little bit and just say, it's a weird world that they're going to be entering into, because AI is, and generative AI and stuff like that is going to eat everybody's lunch here in a minute. And I think, one, if I were about that age, if I were 10 or 12 and I got really interested in that, I would be very excited about new technology and new tools. But my advice to them is solidify your vision. That's the one thing that AI cannot replace. It will never be able to replace your personal view of what the aesthetics, what ideas, what messages, what story you're telling. That's your choice. Lock down your ability to tell a good story. Really focus on learning those skills and focus on learning how to communicate your artistic vision with people and with machines at this point, because that's where we're going. But then the other thing too is there's a real good benefit to the technology that is emerging right now. And that is, you don't have to do what I did. I had to move to New York and then to Los Angeles to be able to work in these industries at all. Right. And honestly, it put me in contact with a lot of kind of unsavory stuff. It put me in contact with a lot of people whose values I really disagreed with and whose ideas I really, really disagreed with. It put me in touch with, it's an industry, the entertainment industry in general is a pretty rough industry. It kind of attracts megalomaniacal people and people who are pretty not good to work for or with. It attracts a lot of abuse. And some of that has to do with the fact that there's way more people who want the job than can get the job. And so it puts the kind of Harvey Weinstein people in positions of authority. The really exciting thing to me about what we used to call democratization of these tools is that you can be me now, which is me in rural Georgia from a studio that I have in my own home, right, or on my own property. And you can make all kinds of stuff now without needing to go through the gatekeepers in that industry. And so I think there's pros and cons, way more competition. You're going to be struggling against a whole lot of other people who want the same things that you want. But you can do what you want to do. You can tell your stories, and you don't have to convince some studio executive at Fox to make it for you. And that's pretty exciting. So that would be my advice. Really focus on what stories you want to tell and focus on solidifying your vision and communicating that vision, because that's going to be the other piece. You can't make what you want without being able to express it to, another person, or again, the robots that are going to be making a lot of this stuff.
No, I think that was the perfect thing. I loved that answer. Well, we will leave it there. Thank you, Sean, again for coming on. It was so great to see and talk to you again. Hopefully it won't be years until the next time. So we will leave it there. As always, guys, don't forget to like and share the podcast with your friends. And until next time, we will talk to you later.